Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing? Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. And that's all I have to say about that. It's not my holiday, that's for sure.
Yeah. I had a few trick-or-treaters. I think I had it. Of course, had the Spider-Man, it had a bunch of princesses, and saw a few bunnies. So I was thinking of like Alice and Batwoman, but
hmm
no Batwoman, no Batwoman. I was
Mm,
like, I guess it's too soon.
yeah. I mean, they've only had like 7 episodes,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. A coworker of mine, her son, who's I don't know, a 16, he uh he is Thanos.
Oh,
And she made the costume and
nice.
the way she had him posing, man, I was just like, that is a miniature version of Thanos, and it's really funny.
Yeah, actually, what? So I was out of town at a conference in Idaho, of all places, but it's this place called Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And so Saturday night, I had the biggest case of FOMO because this place is a big resort. They have a lake. It's in like North Idaho, just over the border of Washington State. And so apparently people from Spokane and everywhere come in, and it's like they have these huge party boats.
Mm.
And so I saw, speaking of when we mentioned Thanos, I saw Thanos, but I think one of the best costumes I saw when people were going to the parties on the boats was a depressed Thor. I mean, the guy was a spitting image of depressed Thor, and it
That's not what
was
we call him. We call him Fat Thor.
yeah, Fat
Yeah.
Thor. I know. I was just trying to be nice, but yeah, Fat Thor. Yeah, I mean, but the dude looked just like I was like, hey, Fat, what's going on here?
So that's a long name, Depressed Thor. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, that doesn't roll off the tongue like Fat Thor does.
Yeah, Fat Thor does roll off.
Oh,
And Fat Thor, I mean, even down to Mjolnir, it was just like the dude was just, yeah. I had to give props. I was kicking myself. I didn't get a picture of it.
so are you watching Batwoman?
I am. It's like I have to say, it's my show now. I won't say it's my show, but I am converted. I this week really it got me. I'm on. I'm on board. I'm on board
What
now.
happened? Like
I,
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, so it was quite honestly Ruby Rose's performance. I think she finally hit the right notes.
It's like she was listening to you and she changed, they re-edited that episode.
If it's possible, I don't know. I would like to, my ego would be like, yeah, they listen to me, but no, I think maybe it's just they're finally finding their stride. But also, I think maybe it was just quite honestly just the episode itself. I mean, just dealing with identity.
Mm, yeah, classic. I like this episode. I'm mixed on, and it's because I really thought it was a smart setup in the opening when you understand for Kate how she's a person not afraid to be who she is. I mean,
Hmm.
she's out and
Hmm.
proud and a
Hmm.
lesbian.
Hmm.
But now to have the secret and
Yeah.
to feel as if she's suddenly forced back into a bat cave, i.e., a closet,
Hmm.
that causes a lot of that makes her feel more uncomfortable than being out. And I thought that was really smart. My
Yeah.
problem with the episode, though, is I don't feel like they carried that thread enough throughout the entire episode.
That's a fair point. That's fair.
It
I
got a
would.
bit melodramatic.
Yeah, whenever she ran into Sophie, it did get that was definitely to me the low weak point. CW, melodrama that really was not necessary. But of course, I knew it was coming, but that was for at least for me that was the low point of the episode.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole thing with Sophie, it's classic CW, and I don't buy into their relationship. The girl is married to a man. She like that takes a lot to forgive somebody to not only break up with you in the way she did, but then to also move forward on that other path and then hide it.
Hmm.
So I think it again is another interesting story point, but for some reason, I just want Kate to move on from it and
Yeah.
not feel so connected to it. It's like that first love where it happened, but now it's over.
Yeah.
So get over it.
Exactly.
And I really I did like, as usual, the sister is the best part of
Hmm.
the episode.
Hmm.
I like what they're doing. I'm just, CW. Oh, CW. And they never listen to me, so maybe this won't happen. But I just foresee them, Mary interacting with Lucas, and then it becoming a thing, a
Yeah.
thing, which I think they're gonna play into the fact that she's a rich but very smart girl, but
Hmm.
also superficial. A lot of people view her in that way,
Yeah.
while he's like that geeky dork, but very smart and never would imagine she'd beat into him. So they're gonna. I think that they might do that.
Yeah. I can see that. I hope they don't, but uh, they do have a way of bringing their editorial and creative themes into all their shows. So, but again, I think for me, this episode really it felt like it was finally starting to develop an identity of its own,
Mm.
basically by as you perfectly set up, the very fact that Ruby Rose and also Kate Kane is a very out, proud lesbian, very comfortable with who she is, but then in a way it was, as you said, perfectly set up, dealing with those issues of being quote unquote in the closet again, but
Mhm.
instead of her sexuality, this time it's being a superhero, and coming to grips with that. And I think maybe Ruby was drawing on that in her portrayal of Kate and Batwoman this week, which is why to me, maybe that's why she felt more real and gave a more nuanced and emotionally nuanced performance this week,
Yeah.
and didn't feel as flat, because maybe she was drawn on that her personal experiences that to tap into playing this character and dealing with those questions of identity.
Yeah. I think that the writing helped her again.
Mm-hmm.
Where when she probably read that script, she was like, "Oh, that's brilliant! I love
Yeah,
that," and
yeah,
really gave it her all.
yeah.
In comparison to someone who is clearly phoning it in, Stephen Amell on Arrow, and
No, I think Steven's still doing some excellent work this season. I disagree with you on that one.
oh man, can you not disagree with me on the fact that in this episode, Thea and him climb a freaking fake mountain
Hmm.
to randomly sit on a ledge for no apparent reason, and then they get off.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that was
What the heck was that? I
yeah.
don't. I was watching the episode, and then that happened, and I'm like thinking to myself. Clearly, I am focused on doing some real work, and I'm just listening. But did I miss something where there was any setup for the point of climbing up that mountain,
Well,
and then having a heart to heart, and then getting off?
it was well. I think because Athena and
I told
Talia.
you not to disagree with me.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I agree with you in the sense that it was editorially, it did slow down the story. I mean, the episode was it was overall, I think season 8 has been very solid, but I think this one was probably so far the weakest episode of the season.
Yeah, it felt random. Back when they aired the first episode, I was talking about the parallels to the pilot
Hmm.
and the first season. This felt very much like season 3. A
Hmm.
lot of mini stories happening and no real continuity.
Yeah.
And a lot of magic. That magic, like when he burns the scroll and then this ball appears, I'm like, WTF? What the
Yeah.
heck was that? This
Yeah.
is bogus. Now to go back to my point about Stephen Amell acting. Clearly, I just needed a segue, but his what he did in that final shot, seeing Mia, both of them, Kat and him, that was perfect.
Yeah.
And if I had been paying attention more this season, I would have said, "Oh, we called that." I'm still checked out. I mean, it is not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
However, I just I still stand by my point. The biggest issue with both the Flash and Arrow right now for me is that until Crisis happens, I can't really buy into any of these quote unquote stakes. And I'm not drawn to the struggles of the characters. Oliver's does feel a little bit more tangible because we know he does end up disappearing. He does end up...
or does he? I mean,
or does he? Yes. Or does he?
Or does he? Because, I mean, when you think about Mia actually being transported back from 2040 to 2019, it obviously was a trick. One of our listeners, Betty Taylor, Aunt Betty Taylor on Twitter, was asking me, is the FTA, the future Team Arrow, is in 2040 with the flashback, does that mean the Crisis was stopped? And if our heroes weren't successful, there wouldn't be 2040. So I mean, they have this paradox that they've built into this. Clearly, something, the Monitor saved her in that moment after Zoe was killed to bring her back to help Oliver with the Crisis. Does that create a new timeline where Oliver is successful in his mission, as you pointed out, where Barry has become resigned to the fact that he's dying? Oliver is still fighting for trying to figure out a way to stop the Crisis.
Sorry, that was way too much science and loopholes and parallels and paradoxes. Well, do you think that what they're doing on the Flash makes sense this season? Because a lot of it is about Barry's now accepted the fact he's going to quote unquote die. And now we spend an episode listening to all of the Team Flash members deal with the consequences. Iris seems fine about this, by the way, which I don't know if that is strange. I'm kind of glad she's not mopey, but I'm also kind of just like, you realize that's your husband? Like, love of your life? What's going on?
Yeah. She does seem very comfortable with it. I want to spend a little bit of time on the Flash here in a sec. Before we move on from Arrow, I just wanted to think about your thoughts as far as what happened at the end of Arrow and with Mia coming back. And do you think that coming back will be a permanent thing, or after Crisis they get sent back to 2040, or do we just exist in this new timeline? I mean, somehow she's got to go back to 2040 because I guess that's when the new show is going to be set. But
is that for sure?
I think. But then again, maybe not. But then again, but then again, maybe not. I mean, maybe this because when we talked about this last week, we were wondering with the spinoff, assuming it gets picked up for series after the pilot, how they were going to get Earth 2 Laurel and Dinah and Mia together. So maybe this is how they do it.
Yeah, no, we've seen, it's called makeup. They can be older actresses on the show. Yeah. Maybe this is, I've not even thought about it. I watched the episode. Yeah. Done.
All right. This is supposed to be Arrowverse hot takes, but that's...
My hot take is it's cool. He now gets to interact with his daughter. We know that they're going to continue interacting until the Crisis, and then beyond Crisis. No, I have no idea what's going to happen, Will.
Fair enough.
I'm not there yet. I have so many other things to be worried about than what happens after Crisis.
Yeah, speaking of Crisis and Barry, to pick up on your point about Iris and the Flash, she is very calm. and not mopey, which is, I guess, I mean, she's, this character's been through so much of watching herself getting killed over and over again in season 3 that maybe by this point, she's just like, hey, been there, done that. She's just emotionally more mature and prepared for it than some of the other members of Team Flash, or maybe she'll have that breakdown moment as we get closer to Crisis.
Yeah, I think after voicing that opinion that she's likely to have more of a plea the closer it becomes a reality. I think it's still far away from her. Mm-hmm. She doesn't realize that in the tunnels under Central City is where the Monitor has been doing some stuff. They covered that through Nash. Probably the worst version of Harry we've had yet.
No, actually, I don't like. I kind of like Nash.
I think he's just forgettable at this point. Well, and granted, I say that about every Harry when they're first introduced, and then by the end of the season, I'm like, why do we need a new one?
Yeah. Well, I know before I said I did not think Nash was going to end up being pariah, but with the things that happened in this episode, and in particular the ending, and the way this show always has the Wells is having ulterior motives and agendas. I do think our intrepid Nash Wells is going to end up being pariah.
Interesting. One thing I did like about this episode, as I was watching it, is the dynamic between. Are we calling him Dr. Blood? Is that his name?
Bloodwork.
So Bloodwork and this drive to continue living, like against and losing everything. And there's something really interesting about that. Like when we're talking about mortality and the desire to continue life. And I think that is ultimately what a lot of us are trying to do. And it's similar, but it's different enough where I feel refreshed by it because it's not about destroying Central City. It's not about destroying Barry Allen or the Flash. It's not a vendetta. It's not about money or greed, unless you equate the greed for life by taking others. So I really thought that was cool, especially as Barry is trying to make Cisco and Joe understand that when you sacrifice yourself, you are saving others, and it's not really fair for him to not make that sacrifice when he knows who else is put at risk. Because it doesn't work that way, Some people die and some people live, and we're all mortals, and nobody gets to live forever. So I really liked that whole plot line. I just wish some of the other stuff, the plot line with Ralph was probably the most distracting for me.
Yeah. I mean, I wish sometimes. I know again, since it's such a large ensemble cast show, they feel like they have to have A, B, and C stories. And sometimes I wish they could, it's okay if we just have an A and B story, because
I know, preach.
You don't necessarily have to give everyone a story each week. And I agree. I mean, I have grown to like Ralph as a character, but I think I think Cisco's dealing with Barry disappearing and other members of the team, it was enough in this episode. We didn't need to have another journey of Ralph doing the same thing in this episode.
Okay. Did I hear correctly, or did they? I know this episode is probably written months before Joker came out, but still, there was a line in it where Bloodwork basically said what was said in the Joker movie about, my mama always told me that I would save lives or make the world a better. And as soon as he said it, I'm like, oh my God.
That was.
Which again made me really like the villain. And I like the actor is fully committed in this role.
Yes.
And I think that's genius. I really like how at first Barry wanted to help him and then realized that this man is the very one who he's trying to hunt. I like that bait and switch.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting. Right now, Bloodwork and Barry, they like know each other as humans, not as metahumans or anything else. So I would probably overall prefer the Flash over both Batwoman and Arrow this week.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Flash, so far, other than the season premiere, I'll have to say that the show has regained its footing, and it really didn't take not much course correcting to do it. I think having a new showrunner has helped them get that right balance again, and really Jesse L. Martin being back has made tremendous dividends for the show. I mean, the scenes with Barry and Joe at the end there, I mean, that was quintessential Flash. I think the heart of the show that really, I think, has been missing the last couple seasons.
Fair point. And I would have wanted more of that, less of Ralph.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not because I don't like Ralph. I am a convert just like everyone else is. And I disagree. I don't think that this episode is enough to let me say that they have found their footing, because I still feel like the first few episodes, it's uneven still. I feel like they're still a bit trying to find their voice, and it's because just like the characters, the writers also have this crisis over their heads and trying to lead up to it. So it reminds me of something Stephen Amell, I think, said in an interview back in like season 4, where they're starting to lose their identity the more shows that are created, and then they're trying to introduce all these other characters instead of really focusing on Oliver Queen's journey. And there is something to be said about that, where when you create a universe, suddenly the character journeys start to dissipate.
Yeah, but see, I feel like this. I hear your point. I have to disagree with you some, because I feel like the Flash again is about Barry Allen, whereas before, I would agree with you, in seasons 4 and 5, it did get too much into the secondary characters and not about Barry. And last season was really, it became a Nora show. This season, I feel like the focus is back on Barry because, yes, because the crisis is looming, and it's been something that has been looming since, quite frankly, season 1, and it just got pushed forward because of various storytelling and narrative reasons. So I'm enjoying the show again. It's what I'm finding the elements about it that drew me to it to begin with, and again, I think it has found it's getting back to finding its footing, and one of the main reasons why I think that is Jesse being back and having those moments that I've been missing between him and Barry.
And as Barry finds his footing, Kara, I'm still watching this show. I don't know what it's trying to do this season.
Yeah.
Or maybe I do, and I just am not engaged, and I'm not finding it relevant.
Yeah, I'm as I told you before we started recording, I'm kind of checked out on Supergirl right now. I've kind of quickly scanned the episode this week and really have living it through other people's experiences and reviews. It's just not resonating with me. Unlike Black Lightning. Yeah.
Hey, I literally today I got home and I started watching Mr. Robot, the latest episode, and about at 5 o'clock I'm like, nope, can't do it. Watching something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that was a weird episode. I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, Elliot, Mr. Robot, Tyrell, all lost, going on this crazy journey. Okay. And then Dom and this weird sex thing happening, and it's like flips back and forth, and you're like,
Yeah.
what the heck is, and also the set design. One
Yeah.
one thing that really irritates me is when I can recognize that there is a set being
Mhm.
used. I'm
Mhm.
just like, you should have budget to make that more cinematic. I mean, Sam Esmail, go back to season one, your sets were glorious.
Yeah.
And this is like they shot on the back lots of Batwoman.
Yeah, this week's episode, it was honestly completely forgettable for me. I watched it, didn't. Yeah, I dozed off on it. I was yeah, they. I feel like as much as I love this show and was so ready for it to come back, this season's been a little bit. It's been lackluster, I have to admit.
It's I just, anytime I watch it, I think to myself, I'm still focused on being like, this is not season one.
Yeah.
Or this is, how did we get here? Or what happened? Why does it feel like this is really being drawn out and we're only a few episodes in this season, and why don't I care anymore? So I'm more thinking about those questions as opposed to really dialing into the show. I'm like
Yeah.
no longer watching the show, but more having a different experience about like, how did my all-time favorite show like get to this point where I'm just trying to get through it and doing a really bad job. Um anyways, and it's funny, I keep looking at these notes and
Yeah.
my eyes keep getting drawn into Black Lightning and your bullet point about how Lynn is getting addicted to green light. I will
Yeah.
admit, Will, I have not watched an episode of Black Lightning since the
You,
first one.
yeah.
So how and why is Lynn, of all people, addicted to green light?
So it's really, this season has been amazing. You know how like last season where we just had to watch Supergirl because it was just so good.
Yeah.
That's how Black Lightning is this season. So you definitely, if you had to adjust your viewing habits, drop Supergirl right now and go to Black Lightning, because the Friedland's been occupied. So the first few episodes we had Jefferson in the pit, where basically where the ASA is testing all the metas. So Lynn has become obsessed with trying to find a cure to help the meta disease as well as the green light disease drug that we were introduced in the first season. And so she's just, so bring up to speed, Jefferson and Lynn have been able to leave the ASA's facility. They're back in Friedland this episode, so we're seeing the full effects of the occupation of Friedland by the ASA, and people's civil rights being violated. The chief of police is being kicked out of his office. I mean, there's just a lot of different things going on. And at the end of the episode, Odell, so Lynn is like obsessed about this one particular patient that she's treating, and she's just getting literally physically and mentally just worn out. Jefferson's trying to help her, and she's just not taking it. And so at the end of the episode, we learned that Odell has been giving her subliminal messages each time she's looking at a tablet or a screen or something like that. Take green light, take green light. And earlier in the episode, she tested a sample of the cure on herself to see if it would work. And this cure had small traces of the drug in there. So that's how they're getting her turned on to the drug. And then the other thing that Odell is doing to pull the puppet, to being the puppet master, is he is the youngest daughter of Jefferson's youngest daughter is getting sympathetic to the occupation. And Odell is like, and so there's a great scene in the classroom with all of the high school students talking about occupations and events in history where military is taken over and that kind of thing, and Odell sends her an encrypted video of what's going on in Markovia, and she's becomes sympathetic to it. And then by the end of the episode, he is like recruiting her to just basically do his bidding. Right. So it's a lot of good just elements in this season that again, people should not sleep on the show. It's really, really good.
There's just way too much TV.
It's way too much. Yeah.
And I agree. After hearing all of that, maybe I should switch it up, and it's not like I've never just stopped watching a season of Supergirl. Season 1, season 3. Now that I think about it, I feel like they're hit and miss every other season. Every other season works. Every other season, I'm like, no, thank you. Yeah. Because, and I don't know if people realize that for both of us, beyond this show, we watch so many other things. Yep. Like, I am actually really liking Stumptown.
Huh. I've been trying.
Smulders.
Yeah, that was one of those ones that it was on my list to check out this season. I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I do want to check it out.
And I don't know why. I gave up on Mr. Robot and I turned that on, and it's like an extended sitcom where it has a lot of the sitcom-y elements, and but it's not procedural. I would argue it's not procedural because I guess they don't hit the same beats every episode. However, it's really focused on these 3, arguably 4 main characters, and it's just and I noticed I was just watching this episode where it felt like it could be a season finale, and I'm thinking to myself, why are they doing this now? Like, this is the arc. And yet every scene there was a little nod at a potential next story thread that they could pull, because these characters are still new and fresh, and they have a lot of history that is not connected to each other, which is, I think, key to explore. And I don't know. I think I also find myself drawn to it because it's something different from what has been on my rotation for the last few years. Yeah.
And it's good to change it up. And you're right. There's a lot of TV out there, fresh takes on old ideas, new things that the Idea Factory has churned out. So yeah, I think it is good to mix it up. Even though as this week we got a lot of news about HBO Max, the Berlanti Empire, DC Empire continues to grow.
Yeah. Why are they doing Superman and Lois? I don't know why they're doing that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't understand that one. And I know I was having some interactions with some folks online this week about that, and is it necessary, and how does that fit in with Supergirl and everything, and also just the simple fact that the CW is getting kind of crowded.
Kind of crowded.
Well,
it's crowded.
It's very crowded. Yeah.
Call the freaking fire marshal. Get some of those superheroes removed from the premises before we just turn on the alarms and get them all evicted, because it is way overcrowded, and arguably just this genre is starting to get overcrowded.
It is.
Yet I try everything,
Yeah.
Because you never know when a damn Doom Patrol is going to just drop in your lap and be like, where have you been all my life? In that therapy episode, still to this day.
I tell people that one, that episode resonates with me, and it still stands out for me as the best series in this genre for 2019.
Yeah. And that's what I need from these other shows. I need a therapy episode which pulls me back in, is like, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that it was not only renewed from what I heard and what I saw online this week for season 2, but season 3 as well.
Yeah, I think I did see that. I know Yeah, and the other thing is they'll be airing it on both DC Universe and HBO Max, which will give it a much wider audience the opportunity to watch this show.
Watch it. The first few episodes, I will admit, not the best. But you get to that therapy episode, you just hold on to Jane, and you hold on to Mr. Robot, or to
Robot Man.
Robot Man.
Yeah.
And you listen to us when we say you will meet perfection.
Yes. You will indeed.
So honestly, it's funny how I sit here and I complain like there's so many things to watch. There's so much going on with my normal TV shows, and yet I have watched the latest Shane Dawson YouTube doc series, The Beautiful Life of Jeffree Star. For the past month, I watch every episode that they drop. A bit inconsistent with the dates and times, but I always watch it, and then I rewatch and I rewatch and I rewatch, and they finally aired the last segment. I love this. This is so cool what they did. I don't know if people are familiar, or if you're even familiar with who Shane Dawson is, or even Jeffree Star for that matter.
Was Jeffree Star is he the makeup?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remember a story, oh gosh, about a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago, about, didn't he have a falling out with someone else? I can't remember the name.
Like 5 billion people, from what I understand.
Okay,
so
yeah.
He's not afraid of conflict.
Yeah, because didn't build up his brand through YouTube?
Mm-hmm. Well, see, Shane Dawson did. And I guess Jeffree did too, but Jeffree's also he's always been a fan of the beauty world, and he started his own company, I think in 2014, and then it kicked off. Last year, Shane Dawson did a series about him because a lot of people have voiced their opinions about Jeffree Star and believe him to be a monster, and so Shane wanted to see if that was true. So he did this lovely series that you can find on his channel. I've watched it. It is surprising where it goes, and during it there's a pitch where Shane comes in and they said, okay, pitch me your makeup idea, and that's where conspiracy came from. And it didn't even occur to Shane Dawson that a year later he would be launching his own makeup palette, his own lipstick, or anything. And this is why I love this series so much, is it is titled The Beautiful Life of Jeffree Star. This is the first Shane Dawson series that I think is more about Shane Dawson than anything else. Because it is the underdog. Shane Dawson is like the Rudy on YouTube.
Wow.
Where there's something so genuine about him, where he doesn't realize how much he has 21 million subscribers.
Right.
And yet he doesn't think anybody's gonna care about a makeup line. And so now that he realizes it, and he has Jeffree who's like pushing him, and it's gonna explode.
Yeah, I do. Now that you bring this up, I do remember seeing this, and I mean, it was one of those things that's kind of oddity. I was like, oh, here, another YouTube star, blah blah blah. So I didn't get it as I didn't. I'll be completely honest. I didn't follow it much more after I saw that initial blow up, I guess. But I think I will have to go back and check this out a little bit deeper now.
It's just really impressive what they're able to do. Time, budget, and the editing is so cool. I simply rewatch it because I love how they edit together. It's shot over the course of months, and they do it. They tell it in a way where they know how to build tension. They know how to build climax, and so it's a bit choppy, but you're really seeing an evolution of not only a product but of a person and a person who we all know is a genuine and nice guy and who deserves to win.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the series, when you see that come full circle, that's the beautiful life. Like knowing that you can come out victorious on that and actually, and that's what I love so much about it, because I've been watching his series probably now for a year, and yet this is the first time where I really felt like we were getting. It wasn't Shane Dawson exposes this person. It wasn't, or lives the day in the life of this person, or understands this person. It was more about him and how he sees himself and how others view him, and really coming to terms with that.
Hmm. Hmm. That's fascinating. Was it James Charles or something controversy? Was that in this?
So it was alluded that if you watch the trailer for the series, it's alluded that it's a part of it, but it's not.
Okay.
They mention James Charles, they don't mention the scandal.
Okay. Okay.
Which I was kind of disappointed because I was hoping for some tea on that.
Yeah. Well, that was the controversy I was referencing earlier with Jeffree Star was that, but okay, well, that's disappointing, but it still sounds pretty fascinating.
Oh, I love it. I really do. I think this is the best one yet, too, just in terms of production and what they did with their editing choices. They did make one mistake, though. Episode 2, they play a song. Same song is again used in the last episode. Just saying. I think that's a mistake.
It happens.
Oh, man. So in other TV watching, we got the second episode of Watchmen.
Yeah. What did you think?
Sorry, I just went on a full tangent. I was hoping that you could give me. Can we do your thoughts first, because I need to take some deep breaths.
Yeah. You could. Yeah, I'll jump in here. So I really like this episode, and I'm liking this series. It takes, I think, the open with the in World War I, where they have the Germans try to turn the soldiers, African American soldiers, against America and questioning what is democracy, and all the things that the propaganda that they were using, which again, this opening was based off something that really did happen. Right. And that's what I'm really liking about this show, is that it's taking things that happen in our universe and then using them in that universe, alternate universe that the Watchmen show is based in, and really using it as an opportunity to really tell a story, a very hard and uncomfortable story for some people to watch, just based off of how folks just get batshit crazy watching the show on Twitter, but that's Twitter, but that means it's resonating, and it is causing people to think. And so I liked the way they were doing that. I liked how they did confirm that Will was indeed the kid from the last episode.
Yep.
That was definitely confirmed for us, and then just the way that they used this as an opportunity to deepen both Will and Angela's story, her backstory, and we see what happened during the I guess, was it the White Knight Rebellion, when the Rorschachs went and killed all the police
I
officers.
don't know what they call it, but
Yeah,
it was Christmas, and it
yeah,
caught me off guard too, because they transitioned it to make it appear as if it was present day when it was
exactly.
really the flashback.
Yeah,
Smart move, smart
yeah.
move.
It
You
was,
catch your viewers off guard, and if they're
yeah,
really paying attention, they'll quickly shift and be like, "Oh, this is a flashback."
yeah. It's a flashback, and also how to use the Hooded Justice as a way to sort of narrate his story, and then
Uh-huh.
used it, as a way to tell Angela's story as well, as far as being the masked hero.
And I really like what you were talking about in terms of the opening. Because last week I mentioned how are they going to end every episode with that allusion to that classic image of the yellow smiley face with the blood on it?
Mhm.
No, they aren't. But what they are doing, and what I'm curious to see if they do again next week, is a history lesson.
Yeah.
Every episode opens up with a history lesson that's
Hmm.
connected to these characters, specifically Will.
Hmm.
And I wonder if that's the common thread here, where and then and then it brings you to present day, and it's still normal. And I think this show also has this ability where the longer it goes on, the longer the episode goes on, the stranger things start to be.
Yeah.
It's almost like they don't want to be loud in your face. They
No.
almost want to pull you in and say and ground you in historical
Hmm.
facts,
Yep.
and then bring you into this other version of our reality.
Yeah.
That is really smart and clever.
Yeah.
And again, it is a slow burn.
It
This is
is.
not a fast show, but it also is not spoon feeding things.
No, no, it's definitely doesn't spoon feed things, and I like they have flipped things. For example, Nixonville, whenever the police, so we had the Judd be very brutally murdered. I mean, it was a lynching. I mean, for all intents and purposes. And instead of and again, it was because, but then even though he was brutally murdered that way, the questions become, as far as with through Will, is he good? Is he evil? Because and telling Angela to look in the closet, and
Mhm.
and Angela took it literally. So she found a way to go to the house, and then she discovered, looking at the you know after she feigned her collapse, found searched the room and found found a Klan outfit, which the cavalry basically seems to be that world's version of the Klan.
Which is the very thing I did not want to happen after we were raving last week about how they made the smart decision and not reveal him to be working with the Klan.
Or is
Now
he?
well, see, that's what I was thinking. I was
Yeah.
like, did they really do that, or is or is it something he inherited from his? Because there does tend to be a legacy. They keep showing a photo specifically of what appears to be his father, grandfather, and so there might be some inheritance. So maybe it isn't, but a part of me is also like, why the heck would you put that? Like, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. It still bummed me out. Like, I
It
don't
did.
know what they're gonna do with it, but it kind of was a point in the episode where I just stepped back and I'm like,
Right.
I like calling things, but I really didn't want them to go there with that character or that relationship, to be frank.
Yeah, yeah, because that at least in the pilot, and her reactions, when they had the flashback when she was assaulted in her home, and he came to her, was at her bedside when she was in a hospital recuperating, and the deepening of their relationship, and it was almost like father daughter, mentor mentee, type of strong bond that they had. And
Mm-hmm.
then you see that, and you're just like, oh no. I mean, is there anything in this world like clear black and white, and other than the race? And it's like, no. And I think that's what's so compelling about this show, is that there's no clear hero and villain. It's a lot of shades of gray. I mean, you see the police reaction in Nixonville where they just go in and just start ransacking the place and beating up people. You know, so you had a police brutality. And wait a minute, aren't these supposed to be our protectors?
Mm-hmm. Well, and to go off of that point, you have Will, old man, and has a lot of roots in this town and in this town's history, and yet his dad wrote on that note, "Protect this boy," and I always thought that was weird, like in a way that just the lettering, and there was something about that where I'm like, I understand, son. Yeah, protect this boy, but he didn't say my son. Maybe that's it. Protect this boy.
Yeah.
And so there was something very like, is why, and also is there something else not knowing? So as the episode goes on, it becomes much more not is Will good or bad, but also who is Will?
Right.
Why is he here? Why now? And what is his connection to all of this? And where does he come from? And by the end of it, like, again, the brilliant move to have him be sucked out,
Yeah.
sucked up, and
in higher places.
apparently,
Yeah.
Was it Dr. Manhattan? Was it someone else? But clearly he knew, like, and there's something, that actor who's playing him, perfect casting. Love that actor.
Louis Gossett Jr. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's doing really good. I really like that mysterious grandpa kindness, yet also mischievousness.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's played perfectly. So by the end of it, I'm just like, yep, that's what you do next. It's, again, it's not black and white. It's not is he human or is he not human? It's more like, who is he?
Yeah, and we do get a little bit of answers to that question, and then with the red predations, which I thought was a very ingenious way that they use that to establish that he and Angela are granddaughter. Having the DNA testing, it was showing her using her police skills to figure that out, and him just obviously being at the scene of Judd's murder. It just seemed very, I mean, all these little threads definitely are building us to something, and also we can't not talk about not the Keen. Keen was the senator's son, but
Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons' character. Yeah.
Can we not talk about that plot point?
It was pretty weird. Yeah.
It continues to be the weakest part of these episodes for me.
Well, I think it links. It does link back. To your point, as you said earlier, we're going to get We're going to get characters from the comics in each episode. So this one again reinforces that Dr. Manhattan will eventually return to Earth from Mars. But the other character that was introduced this week from the comic was a Hooded Justice,
mm-hmm.
and one of the linkages that HBO apparently has put out a little companion piece you can go online to fill in some of the blanks. Yeah. But even in story, they note that whenever he was introducing himself, he mentioned his name was Mueller, and Rolf. And so one of the little nuggets that the story notes is that the type lady who was fluent in English typed the note in the propaganda letter may have some the connections between that, and then the connection back traces back to Will, because his father ended up getting that piece of propaganda. So there is some linkages between Hooded Justice and Will through that, and how they explore that may or may not happen in the series. But again, all these characters are just interrelated and somehow. and I like that, and I like how they're building this world in the Watchmen.
Yeah, you know more about the characters than I do, and I still, there's something about that whole storyline that it's not connecting for me. And it's also because I don't know as much about Watchmen from the books or the stories or the movie. It doesn't feel as connected. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but see, that's what I like about this show. You can see, I'm not like a diehard Watchmen. Not, I mean, my knowledge of it is read it once years ago, and just basically, getting back up to speed. I just, quick Google search, but the thing I like about this series is you can, you can enjoy it either way. So so that I don't feel like it's sacrilege what they're doing, and seeing some of the review bombing that is going on out there. But at the same time, you can still come to it very clean and not knowing much about the series. And yeah, you may miss a few Easter eggs here and there, but it's still overall enjoyable experience for just the things we were talking about this evening. Basically being history lessons, as you said.
Production alone. I mean, production, that's really what I like about the show. Yeah. And now that I think about it, it has a very similar quality to The Handmaid's Tale. Because Handmaid's Tale does a very similar thing where in how they design the production, it feels like Gilead is a part of our world, yet there are subtle changes. And the Handmaid's outfit alone it's not subtle. It's like, damn, this is not the world, it. But still, there's other things that they do to twist it and to twist that reality. And so the production value, again, just floors me with some of the shots and the images. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get over seeing police officers fully in their uniforms and then with the mask.
Yeah.
That there's just something about that really is beautiful and so fascinating.
It is, especially given, we in story, and we get introduced to that this week with the Defensive Police Act, how they got to be masked, with the exception of their supervisors, and is how how they are the ones who can be the masked vigilantes, even though they have the power of being a law enforcement officer.
I mean, the one flaw of this episode was there was no Mr. Panda.
No, I know I missed the Panda. I was hoping to see him roll up in there whenever they were taking down Nixonville.
I was so ready for him to drive up, get off the car, and be the idiot to start the riot and the fight. Yep. And I would just be like, classic Panda. Yep. Classic Panda. But I do have to say, keep in mind, every episode I'm going to be on the lookout for Panda.
I am going to be looking forward to, yeah. Yeah, don't need to be in Bates. Don't need to be in Azumida's house as much. I'm looking for the Panda.
Yeah, it's Panda Watch 2019.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's it for us tonight, Will. Yeah. Happy Halloween again. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk on Twitter. That's WILLMPOLK.
You can find me at Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. But most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.